Good evening, everyone. This is Curtis here from the Social Work Race. Normally, when you are listening to this podcast, there is a song playing. I might add one later on. You know, I like my background music, But thank you for joining us again. Yes, we're going to make more live and more video recorded podcasts. This is for primarily social workers on the front line, but anyone who is working on the front line of social services. This is the podcast for you. This is where we learn and grow, and we have very comfortable and uncomfortable discussions around issues that we face on the front line. This is a space for you to learn and share. So please do that. Learn, share, and subscribe. It will help the channel. It will help others learn as well. I'm Curtis. You've heard about me before. And if you go on to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you will see how many podcasts I've done with not only just myself, but others too, having those conversations so that when you leave this podcast, you will be more enabled, more clued up as to what's going on out there, because behind the face of this beautiful face of the UK, there's a lot going on and it's a complex world. So welcome again. And we are really fortunate to have someone I found on LinkedIn as I was scrolling through, Ade from Agency Connection. Stick with us because she has a lot to share, and I think she will be a great resource for you if you are interested in doing probably some extracurricular support with what she has to offer. But we'll go into that in a moment. But yes, Ade, thanks for joining us on the Social Work Race. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Curtis. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, I had to. I just saw your very high quality videos, and it was just such an interesting thing to look at on LinkedIn. We'll go into it in a minute. But you know what? Before we even go into it, and this is something I really want to touch on, because I'm so interested in the hustle stroke entrepreneurialism and how you've used your skills and resources to provide a service outside of the prescribed field of social work. I don't know if you're going to charge me to teach me this, but we'll see. but I'm also, at some point we'll touch on it, hopefully interested in how you transition. In fact, we will, because it's really, we're going to look at how you transitioned from classic social work to where you are now. But if you would, let me stop talking now. Give us a synopsis of your social work journey to where you are now.
Right. Thank you for that question. Oh gosh, you're causing me to think back now. So I've been qualified since 2004, something like that. And I started as a local authority social worker. I've always worked in children and families. And but I think at the beginning, to be honest, at the beginning of my training, I remember thinking, probably days into my social work training, thinking, I would like to do independent work, because I think we had somebody who came to sort of talk to you about options and things of what you can do after you qualify, that kind of thing.
And I remember.
I think one of them was an independent social worker, and something about whatever they said made me think at the time, I wonder whether I ever make it that far. I remember just thinking that. And I thought, if I do make it through this course, I would like to do independent work at some point. But in my mind at that time, it was like, oh, gosh, that's something you do, like, I don't know, years down the line kind of thing, But after, at some point, maybe in 2010, I had my son, and I was working in Worcester. Can I say where I was working? In the local authority where I was? I've mentioned it now.
As long as you don't say anything bad.
It's nothing bad. I was working there, but I was living. I live in, where I live is like it's quite a journey to where I was working, and it was fine before I became a mom. But then afterwards, I thought, my goodness, this is full on, all this sort of toing and froing and things. So something about that made me start to think, okay, I need to take my social work journey in a different direction. I need to work somewhere else where I'm not too far from home, so I can, like, get to my son if I needed to, that kind of thing. So that sort of began me looking, I suppose, how I'm going to transition into something else, but I didn't know what this something else was at the time. But anyway, fast forward, I left from children and families team, the frontline work, as it were. I applied to become a fostering social worker. And I think perhaps at the time I thought somehow that it would be maybe easier in some way. I think that's what I thought. I thought, because I've seen people who were doing fostering and they didn't seem to be as stressed as I was. So I guess in my mind, I thought, yeah, that I'll do that. So I applied and I got a job as a fostering social worker. Well, little did I know that actually all that did for me really is that I feel it's more complicated as a fostering social worker because you have even more people to liaise with. So as a fostering social worker, you have the child social worker to kind of obviously work in collaboration with. Then you have all of their team, their manager, you got the families to deal with, you've got they're just more people. You kind of you grow your your network, as it were. And that's something that I found very quickly. And also, you have obviously the foster carers to engage with, and it's just more array of sort of layers of people that you're now engaging with, and in order to make sure that the child is well looked after, you know. But it's not that it's a bad thing, but it's just something that you kind of maybe don't realize until you're sort of in that role, because things always look different when you're sort of outside of it, and when you're in it, you're like, oh, okay. But anyway, so as I started in my fostering role, I started to see how I can use my voice to I suppose represent children. Not that I couldn't represent them as a frontline social worker, but I felt like being in the fostering role, I was able to see a different path that I could take, which would help me to get to areas where I could do more. Because I felt like when I was in the frontline role, yes, I was making a difference to children's lives, but I felt like I wanted to do more than that. I wanted to be,
it feels limited, doesn't it?
yes, I think I wanted to be part of the decision makers or something like that. So, as a fostering social worker, you go to panel. You when you assess somebody to become a foster carer, you go to panel with them and sort of explain the life story and that kind of thing. And the panel has kind of, they ask you questions. And although panels don't make decisions, they recommend whether your person that you've brought to panel is going to become a foster carer. So I thought, okay, I've done this fostering role for a while. I would like to become a panel member because I want to be able to, I wanted to be able to have more say, I suppose.
Yeah.
And
These are big decisions. I mean, a panel is really a major. It's a game changer for the lives of the child and the adopter.
Yeah. And I don't want anybody listening to this to think that I'm suggesting that being a frontline social worker, that there's something, do you know what I mean, that there's something wrong with that, or I don't want. I want this to be very clear. It was just, for me, the path I wanted to take. I could only get to do those things by sort of, doing certain roles, and so that was why I made those decisions to join the panel, which that, to be honest, navigating that is a whole different thing in itself, because it's just not very easy to find out how you can become a panel member, but I'll put that to one side for now. But anyway, so I joined my first panel, and then I joined another one, and before I knew it, I was like, at one point I was serving on maybe about 15 panels. And
besides your full-time job?
No, sorry, I'd given up the full-time job by then. So I transitioned. How can I explain it? So at one point I had the full-time job, and when I started the panel, I made a decision to reduce my hours and take
Right.
on and start doing panel.
So it was a
So I
slow
did,
migration.
yes, exactly.
Mm,
Because when I was working full time, it was difficult for me to understand how am I going to go from the full time into the independent. Anyway, I wasn't clear how I would do that. But then I had the opportunity to do the one panel, so I was like, okay, fine. I will reduce my hours and then try to start to do something around the panel and grow that a little bit.
yeah.
So that's what I did. And I think it feels like once I made this space, once I made myself available to be more open to doing more work in panel, the opportunity sort of presented itself. Or
Right.
maybe I was looking a bit closer. I don't know. Maybe it's fate. I don't know what it is, but somehow
Mm.
it happened
But you
once
made
I,
you made that leap. That's the thing. I
yeah,
thought
yeah, yeah.
a slow transition is still a leap, so that's still inspirational. I like that.
I wanted the security of having some income where I knew it was set and I would get that every month. But at
Mm,
the same time, I wanted to go into independent work. So I sort of had my feet in two different worlds for a little while. But then at one point, I something
yeah.
else happened in my job, and I made a decision to take um, redundancy.
Mm-hmm.
So once I did that, there was no looking back.
Mm-hmm.
Really, there was no looking back, and it was a good thing that I made that decision because, in a way, I was being forced to do a role that I didn't want to do,
Yeah.
and I was very clear that I was not going back to doing that.
Mm.
I was like, okay, this is the time now for me to go. I'll take the redundancy, and I'm just gonna leave. And I was, in my mind, I was clear that the independent work would work somehow. It would work. And once I did that, to be honest, I can't even tell you. I've never even advertised myself.
Mm-hmm.
uh, I remember my husband made me these business cards so that I would be able to give them out when I go to events. I've probably given out 4 of those things. It's just, I've never used it, but somehow once I made the decision and I was looking for the work, I
Mm.
just, I kind of just, I kind of just started hearing about this role, or this agency is looking for somebody to do whatever it
Wow.
is, you know independent independent, like IRO job, for an agency, for a charity or whatever. It just sort of opened up. I would ring up about something, and the manager would say, actually, we're looking for someone to do this or whatever, and it just went from there. And
Wow.
so for like three or so years, I did panel work solidly. That's why I had I was serving on 15 panels at one point and doing IRO and things like that. I've never worked for an agency either. I've just worked as me. So yeah.
So this is a miraculous story. I'm waiting for your book, by the way. When you write that book, and I mean that, like, I mean, personally, I love stories of how people how do people make things happen. You've explained it so well. How did you transition? And that was the beautiful part of the story. And what you're doing is you're using your work experience, your qualification, and your entrepreneurial spirit to produce something productive for society. And these are things that society won't see. It's in the background of it all, you know. What I want to do is I just want to share your website.
Sure.
Let's get it up now. Share it on screen. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. And this is agencyconnection.co.uk.
Yes.
Very well put together website. Guys, click on there and please explain what we can do with you as an agency, what service you provide.
So you want me to explain what Agency Connection does?
Yeah, please. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Should
So
have asked
Agency
you to.
Connection is as far as I know, is the first recruitment service where it helps anyone who wants to become a panel member to be connected to adoption or fostering service who are looking for panel members. As I said earlier, when I
Mm.
started my journey of going on to panel, I find it very difficult. I didn't find any agency that could help me. For example, if I wanted to become I don't know, get a job for, as a social worker, there's certain agencies you can register with, and they'll sort of connect you with local authorities or whoever is looking for social workers, and that's relatively is quite common, and most people who serve within social work know kind of how to do that. But as a panel member, there's no service where you can go, where you can register and become a panel member. It just doesn't exist as far
I'm
as
surprised. I
far as
mean,
I could
when I
tell.
spoke to you on the phone previously, I was thinking, no way is there no agency, a central place where we can go and I need a panel member. How did we do it before?
Well, how did we do it before? I'm sure many services are still doing this, whatever it is that they normally do when they're looking for panel members. I would say all the roles that I've secured as a panel member, if I can call them that, because it's obviously not really a full-time job or anything, they've either been word of mouth, or I've known somebody who's sort of serving with that agency somehow. So then they've kind of mentioned it to me, or I've happened to ring them, or somehow it's been within, I would say, within my network. I've heard about the vacancies, and that's how I've kind of applied for them. A couple of times I have been approached because the agency have been aware that I'm a Black woman and I'm a social worker, and they needed to sort of they needed somebody who fit those criteria, if you like, within their panels, because obviously panels also have certain criteria. You have to have a social worker on every panel. So I've been approached a couple of times as well. So that's how I've secured the panel member jobs. But as I said, when I was looking before I got the very first one, it probably took me about 2 to 3 years to eventually find someone who told me about the very first vacancy, because there isn't really a place where you go to find the vacancies. Sometimes agencies do advertise them on their website, but so they do that, or sometimes they'll advertise through maybe like agencies like Coram Bath. They'll use those services. But what I find is this: if you don't have much to do with panel as a social worker, you may not know that you can apply to become a panel member. So so that's the thing, really. If you're not looking for it, you're not necessarily going to find it, because you don't know it's there anyway.
Yeah.
So I knew, because I was working as a fostering social worker, and I was dealing with panel members because of my role, and that's what led me to think, okay, I could play that role. I could do it somewhere else in another agency. But many social workers have asked me, how do you even know about it? Like, I didn't even know that's a thing, And not just social workers, many people ask me generally when I explain what I do, that they didn't know that being a panel member is something that somebody can apply to do. So,
Wow.
so it's obviously not that well advertised. So
Yeah, that's right. It's not really organized. It's just a bit of an ad hoc type of marketing. But we've got it here, Agency Connection. What are some of the interesting issues then that you have discovered? Any issues that you've tried to, challenges that you've tried to meet since setting up this agency?
So first of all, I'm going to say this. So I set up the agency because, one, I realized there was no agency like it. But also the other reason, which is even more of a stronger reason, is because whilst I've been serving on panels for however many years it's been now, 4 years or 5 years or whatever, I realized that actually on those panels, there are panels where I sit and I'm the only person who's not how can I put this, who's not a white middle class person.
You've got to say it. You've got to say it. I think we can handle it.
There's some times, and I just sit down and I'm like, oh my gosh, really? Like, you join another one, you're like, is it going to be the same Is it going to be the same as the one that I found down the road or whatever? And I'm not suggesting that every single panel is like that. There's some
Yeah.
agencies that are much more, they're just much more intentional, or maybe it just so happened that they're able to have their panel a bit more diversified, so they have people of from different communities. It's a mixture of genders, and there's people from LGBT community, and Asian people, and all of that. But there are some that, man, I am
Okay.
literally
Okay. So I'm going to ask an obvious question,
right.
but it has to be because the social work race is where we can at times delicately but appropriately say it. What's the problem with, let's say we're trying to, we have a panel set up for a family. They're I don't want to say black, African family, African couple who were trying to adopt I don't know, black child.
Yeah.
And the panel this particular panel is mostly white. In fact, all white.
Right.
Can I say white? I overthink. So I tend to hear myself and think, could you have said that differently?
Yeah,
But
indeed.
I'm very intentional about what I say as well.
Yeah.
So, and because white and black are very broad terms, so that's why I'm always
Exactly.
checking myself, right? So, and this is important, actually. I guess this is important to know. So, what's the problem with there being a predominantly white panel looking at a black or Asian family? Because if we are experienced or professionals, shouldn't we just look past the color and shouldn't it just be we're looking at the criteria? What's the problem with that?
Well, we should be able to look past the color, absolutely. But it's about understanding. What I find is this: there are times, regardless of who's on the panel, forget the skin color for a second. There are times when I sit on panel and I hear things like, the foster carer is looking after a child who say the child is a dual heritage child, and the foster carer happens to be maybe white British, foster carer, and I've heard this a few times, where I've read the report and I can't see anything that tells me about how well they're supporting the child to identify with their heritage, or again, I'm not saying that this happens all the time. I'm just saying
No, of
that these are
course.
just examples of some of the things that I've come across. So you read the report and you can't understand in the report that, this foster care is doing a really good job. Yeah. But sometimes there's this just issue of heritage and identity, and how are they supporting children to really understand their background, where they come from, what are we doing about life story work, and that kind of thing. Not that is entirely the foster carer's role, because obviously it's a joint effort and we should all be doing something about it. But at times I am, some of the things that I expect for us to ask questions about, I'm not hearing those questions. So I find myself at times and I'm like, okay, so how are they, what have they done about the child's, say for example, the child is a Muslim child, how are they helping that child to access halal food, or,
Are they aware?
yes, exactly. Or you've heard, you read in the report about how they've done something about onion bhaji, or just you know what I mean, like,
Do you know what's interesting? I remember there's a situation where, no, actually, let me say this. There are a number of situations that I've heard of recently, particularly because sometimes we end up putting children in care, and I have lots of social work and foster care friends who have black girls and they do not know how to cater for their hair needs, their hair care needs. That's the biggest one I've heard. And what happens is they may be placed, say, from London to somewhere in Yorkshire, and the child has to make their way hundreds
right,
of miles to a shop that can provide them with certain hair products, because it's everything. I mean, hair to a woman, to most girls, is an important thing.
yeah, yeah,
And it's created a lot of contention and discomfort for the child whilst in the care. It's somewhere that they've been moved right out of their culture, haven't got any hair, haven't got shampoo.
yeah,
And you'd think, well, Vaseline by itself is not going to work, right?
yeah.
Not that we use Vaseline in hair anymore, but I need my hair taken care of, my
Yeah.
skin, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, this is something that's interesting. And
So this is it.
yeah,
Sorry
go
to
ahead.
cut you. So
No.
this is the reason why this is why having a panel that is diverse is important, because
Mm,
I, I it shouldn't be the case, but I don't profess, for example, to understand everything about Asian people. Of course I don't, you know. So but if we're in a panel where, you know, we're all from different communities,
yeah.
if something arises, we can all chip in and say, actually, can you just tell me a little bit about that? You can ask that question, you know, because it might be something that I didn't think about, because I don't understand I don't understand the culture, I don't understand the faith, you know.
Mm,
So if the panel is mixed, we're more likely to pick up issues and make sure that they're dealt with, and that children
yeah.
are looked after as best as
Wow.
possible. You know, we have children who come as asylum seekers. You know, sometimes foster carers don't understand the language, because obviously it's an emergency placement and there's no time or space to look for a family that can look after that child based on that language. And you know what I mean? There's times that you can't do that. So if foster carers are using Google translation or whatever skill that or tools that is within their power to make sure they're able to communicate with children, you know. So sometimes there's something within culture, things that we can't always pick up on if we don't understand the context of the culture.
Of
So
course.
that's why it's important for us to have a broad range of people on panel, so that
Mm,
we make sure that the right questions are being asked. At times, even the social workers who are
mm,
supporting foster carers may not fully understand it, because, for example, if I have a black social worker who's looking
yeah.
after an Asian family, they might not get it, you know.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
vice versa, if it's a white social worker, they might not fully ask the question that has something to do with African understanding or what. You know what I mean? Just things like that,
Mm,
really. And at times, when I read reports, I feel like some of the cultural things can just be a bit brushed over. You just get like
mm,
a couple of sentences that say something like they live in a diverse area and whatever, and then that seems to be the end of the story. And like, well,
yeah.
there's much more to it than they live in a diverse area. Do you know what I mean? I need to understand that they've got that child and they're meeting their needs as much as they can do, you know, as much as possible.
There's a lot of effort that goes into fostering and adoption assessments.
Yeah.
I've seen the assessments. Wow. It's like writing a book.
It's not like
It is. It is writing a book, a novel. And saying that, and I want the listeners, viewers, to understand that if we can say so much about how appropriate and how qualified someone is to look after one of our children, there has to at least be in that novel a chapter on identity and needs, and to be honest about that.
yeah.
What we do understand and what we don't understand, maybe. I think that's really powerful. And I guess that means that you must have, I think Agency Connection then must have at least 2 USPs, unique selling points, which is you are the only maybe agency for, in fact, I'll let you give it to me. The only,
As far as I know,
yeah,
Agency Connection is the only agency that recruits panel members for adoption and fostering services.
yeah.
As
And
I
the other
can.
USP is that you are also focused on making panels more diverse.
Yeah, yeah, that is absolutely on my heart. And you know, we're in 2022. We should not still be having panels where, you know, it's majority white panels. It's not
Yeah,
okay. It's not okay. Even if it's in an area where it's majority white British children, we
yeah,
still need to have an understanding of people from different cultures
you
and
have
different
to.
heritage.
Yeah,
People who look different to us, we need to have that understanding, because you know, if we just focus on, well, we only get people like who look like this and that's the end of the story. That no,
but, but
that doesn't work.
but interestingly, there is a massive. Whilst we're on a topic to show how much more important it is, there is a massive disparity in minorities needing care.
Yeah.
No, sorry. There is a significant disparity in the minority carer field. So there aren't enough minority carers. And so you can then expect, and I hope that my assumption is right, in that if we have a higher per capita need for minority carers and a lack of minority panel members, we're going to see the child through white eyes. Now, we did say earlier, we just want to be clear about this. This is not about racism. This is just about need.
Yeah.
And what it can lead to is a really narrow way of thinking, or things that are really important that are missed if we don't diversify.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And that's exactly where my heart is about that. It's you know what triggered me, what I suppose what was the last straw, really, because the trigger has been there for a long time. And before I set up the agency, I have tried, what I was doing was I was connecting people that I knew who wanted to be panel members with these services where I was already sort of serving. So I would say to them, have you thought about, sort of recruiting more panel members from this community or that community and whatever, when I see where the gap is on the panels where I was. So as far as I was able to, the people that I had within my reach, I was connecting them. But then when George Floyd incident happened, something around that just threw me down this kind of trauma, is what I would call it. I was just like, oh my gosh, we can't carry on with all of, we can't carry on with this.
It did wake up a lot of things, didn't it?
And I felt like I've been going on and on, because I'll come home, I'll be complaining. I complain to my, to my friends who are social workers. I tell them, this is the situation that I come across, and it just really bothers me. And I felt like, I've been saying this for years, and I thought, Ade, stop talking, get on and change it.
Wow. This is it.
It's just sort it. And to be honest, I think in my mind, it was very straightforward. I set the agency up, I connect people, bish, bash, bosh, done. But actually,
you made it sound too easy, right?
I didn't think it would be. And then it's not that it's impossible, but it's just I didn't really think about the business aspect of running an agency, or there's just all these other challenges and all the finance that you need and all of that kind of stuff. I didn't really think too much about it. I was just like, okay, this is my focus, I'm going to do that, and somehow it would just work. But of course, you need money to set up a business. You need IT skills to do like social media things, and just a whole array of stuff that I kind of didn't really consider. But in a way, it's good that I didn't think about them, because if I had done, I would have probably just talked myself out of it, because I'd have been overwhelmed, and I would have been like, oh no, that's too much, and like, forget it. This is why the agency is not there, because other people probably thought about this and they didn't do it. So I'm glad that I didn't really, I was not as aware as I am now. But now that I'm in it, it's challenging, but I wouldn't change it.
You know what? I've got some questions for you. This is you've got me. I did say in the beginning, I'm all about how people hustle, and you are inspiring me now. Let me ask this question. Can you just give us a minute or two, actually, to encourage someone to chase their idea, not a dream, but their idea? From your perspective, I'd like to hear what you have to say, because, for example, I've set up this podcast.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's difficult to get people to come on. They have a lot to say, but as soon as they hear that there's a camera or a mic, they're like, and so what do I do? Do I take that as a knock to make me feel like I can't do it? Actually, we're doing it. We're doing something, and I'm looking at you setting up your business. And for those out there who are listening and have an idea,
yeah,
what would you say to them on that?
Wow. Here's the thing.
Hmm.
I didn't want to be on my last breath and then be thinking, oh, I wish I had done this or I'd
Mm.
done that. I didn't want that to be my story. So I was just like, whatever it takes, whatever it is you need to do,
Mm.
just do. I don't know how to say it, and I know I'm making it sound very, very simple,
Mm.
but what is the alternative?
Yeah.
Is either you put all the effort into doing that thing, or you don't ever achieve it, and then you're just full of regret. I mean, and I think that's just such a waste. You know, I think it's not very easy to I don't want to say follow your dream, but but in a way, it is a dream, isn't it?
Yeah.
The challenges that we have, it's really important to educate ourselves. I've discovered also that it's really important for me to read and
Yeah.
just learn about things, because actually it opens my mind.
Mm.
Because when you don't do that, you can tell yourself, there's lots of things you can tell yourself, and you can tell yourself a certain narrative, but actually when you read about how other people achieved their dream, it helps you to start to put some sort of plan together how you can do yours. And
Mm.
those things have really helped me.
Wow.
Every day I try to read something. I read books like Atomic Habits. In fact, I read Will Smith's story
Will.
la- over Christmas, and
Is
man,
it
that
called Will?
oh, Will Smith, yeah, you should
We've
read
got
that.
it. We've got it. We've got it.
Oh, it's such a
He's actually the probably the number one inspirational person in my house anyway. But he does it differently.
honestly, he's on a different level. But
Mm.
it's really good. I think it just we need things that open our mind,
Mm.
that helps you to just look at, okay, they've done that. They've done that, and I can do that. Obviously, I'm not Will Smith,
Yeah.
and I don't have billions of pounds or however much money he's got. But
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
point is this: he came from humble beginnings. His dad used to batter his mom. Do you know what I mean? So
Mm.
if he can use, the thing he had was all of the fear from being afraid of his dad. He used that to achieve his dream. Well, if he can use that to achieve his dream, well, you know,
Yeah.
nobody was being battered in my house. So what's my excuse? Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I
I
just think,
see.
I think it's
Wow.
really important to have a positive mindset, and
Mm.
make sure that you're filling it with things that are going to really inspire you. So
Mm.
that's yeah.
Yeah, you've got me. It's like a shot of coffee. You've got me, and it's powerful. Anyone out there wanting to use their social work, doesn't have to be social work,
No.
but anyone out there with their professional qualification, which is helpful to do something. You've heard it today. It can be done. We're talking about what's been done, and for the love of the people, you've done it as well. You've done it because you care. So
Yeah.
we appreciate that. I have some more questions for you.
That's
Um,
okay.
yeah, okay. Okay, here we go. Narrative. So I'm looking for extra work. Is panel a good idea for me as a social worker?
I will ask you this. Do you have the capacity to
Yes.
to do it? And when I say capacity, what I mean by that is
Okay.
time. You need time to be able to read
Yeah.
the paperwork. You said yourself you've seen the reports, yeah?
Yeah.
They can be quite long. Let's call it as it is.
Yeah.
They're quite long. And when it's an adoption panel, it's even longer, because you're reading about the child, you're reading the child's story, the narrative, and then you're reading the narrative of the potential parents as well. So
Hmm.
it can be, so
Yeah.
it can be a few hundred pages of papers to read. So if you have the capacity to be able to read that, and you are willing to learn, because there's so much to learn on there. And that's not to say that's a bad thing. That's a good thing in my book, because I have learned so much from being on panel. And that's one of the things that I love about it, because it teaches me how to be a better parent, is what I think. Because I get to see how other people are parenting the young people in their lives. And I just think, wow, that's amazing. I should be able to do that. I'll copy that idea I try
Yep.
that with my son, you know. So
Yep.
so
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, it is a brilliant idea for many people to be panel members. I mean, and I'm not suggesting that just anyone off the street can do it, but absolutely, social workers, please, yeah. I think it would be good for social workers who don't have, especially social workers who don't have much to do with children and families, to come and experience it, because it gives you a different perspective to the social care system, if you like. Being
Yeah.
on panel has helped me it's helped me in my practice when I've been a fostering social worker, because when I'm sitting on panel, I'm reading the reports that my colleagues have written, in a sense. So it helps me when I'm writing my own report. I know that when I go to panel, this is what they're going to want to see. So
Yeah.
I'm making sure that my report has those evidence in there, when even though obviously it's not the same people reading it, but I'm thinking, when I'm writing, I know this is what the panel members would like to see. So it helps me make sure that I've gathered the evidence and I've presented it in a way that it's I'm basically just spoon feeding the whoever the audience is of all the report that I'm writing. You get to learn so many skills. You get to meet lots of people who are within, not just in social work career, but in different careers. You get to network. It's a natural
Yes.
space to network, and you just get to grow your
Yeah.
career, as it were.
Yeah.
It's just such a good platform. You get to hear things that you wouldn't ordinarily hear, because
Mm.
you know
Mm.
panel business is obviously not discussed out there, it's discussed at panel, but you get to just hear things,
Mm.
and also challenge things. If sometimes you hear things that you think, I'm not sure about that, but you're able to challenge it, obviously in a respectful way.
Mm-hmm.
So I absolutely would encourage I encourage as many people. And in fact, right now, Agency Connection is looking for people from different communities, not just within the Black community, but people from Asian community, Roma community, LGBT plus, people with lived care experience, people who've been adopted, adopters, foster carers, teachers. The list could go on.
Mm-hmm.
you know, Come and please register, because your skills are required on panel. It's
Oh
just,
wow. For sure. Look, here we go.
absolutely. So yeah,
So we've got your contact details at the bottom.
yes.
Scrolling, make contact with Ade if you are interested in joining adoption and fostering panels. You're making a valuable contribution, whatever community you are from. Join us, join her, should say. Us like it's our business, right?
Yeah. Welcome
Secretly
aboard.
took over your business. I secretly became a partner. Join Ade at agencyconnection.co.uk. It's easy to register because I have. Um, there's one more question that I have. What's your, I say number one, but it could be two or three. What's your number one piece of advice to a panel member?
Always be open. Always be open. Sometimes you read, there are times when you've read the paper. I'll speak as me. I've read
Mhm.
the paper, and I'm forming the idea in my head, whether I think,
Mm.
oh yeah, they're gonna be. I can see lots of strength. I can see how they're gonna be able to sort of make a difference to children's lives, and then you meet the couple or the person, and sometimes they're just not quite.
It's
They're
not
just
adding up.
not quite who you
Mm.
thought you were reading about.
Mm.
And it's
Mm.
happened the other way too, when I've read
Mm.
something and I'm like, oh gosh, there's just something niggling. I'm not sure about this. I'm not,
Mm.
there's this issue, and there's some unresolved stuff or whatever. And then you meet them and they blow you away. They are so
Mm.
like really enthusiastic. But that's because sometimes the report doesn't always do people justice or doesn't represent them as best as it can be represented. Because at the end of the day, I can write a report and you can write a report, and we can both present it the way we present it.
Yeah.
So sometimes you got to give people a chance. So that's why I say about being open. Read your things, make your notes, absolutely, but you've got to be open and just let the thing happen. Make your final decision, or well, not decision, make your final recommendation when you meet the person that you're reading about, or the people you're reading about. And also, the other thing is about just being very welcoming. People are so nervous when they come into panel, really, really nervous. Even social workers are nervous sometimes when they're coming into panel, even though it's not them who's been assessed. They've done the assessment, but also I think social workers can feel a little bit like, oh gosh, panel are going to ask me questions. And I've heard colleagues say this, and they're sort of kind of freaking out a bit, So it's really important for panel members to be very, very smiley and be, just be welcoming. And even if there's difficult issues that you need to tackle, because sometimes sometimes you have to be quite blunt and really be like, you need to walk me through this because I don't get I don't get it. It's still very important to be respectful and be gentle. We can be frank but gentle at the same time. And I would hope that I am those things, because I know I can speak very frankly, but I try to be mindful that at the end of the day, that's somebody at the receiving end of something that I'm saying, and I don't want them to be discouraged or but sometimes you have to call things out. So those are two things I'm gonna say. That, I mean, there's much more, but let's leave it there.
Well, it sounded very, very helpful and wise. I guess that comes from all of your experience, so we have to take it and run with that, to be fair. And that's all the questions I have, and I want to really thank you, because it was quite enlightening, to be fair, and encouraging. And it's been a pleasure on that basis to have you on the show. And I always put it to someone live, so they can't say no, because it's actually recorded. But there will be a part 2, right? I'll just put it on you. That's the way I do it. But what I'm saying is, I would love to have you back, because I know you have more to share. And there you go, Agency Connection. That's Ade on Agency Connection. Please just go there if you're interested and register. It's very quick and very easy. It's a lovely website, and I look forward to doing some more with you in the future, Ade. Guys, thank you for listening. Please share, please subscribe, and then share and subscribe. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you next time on the next cast. Take care.